I'll set the scene here. I'm sitting in the press box talking to KDK's Richie Walsh. Okay, he's sitting next to me in the press box. And he asks me, he goes, what do the Steelers do in the NFL draft next year? And I said, I don't know. I think they go defensive line early. And he said, what about a wide receiver? I said, yeah, but I also think that you might make a splash in free agency if you're the Steelers and then go and hope Roman is good. And he said, oh, so you extend George. And I said, yeah, I would imagine they extend George. George is seeming to turn a page, turn a chapter here. That was at like the 6-minute mark of the fourth quarter. By the end of the game, my mind went, yep, all right, well, this is possibly George's last season with the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's where we are. Because you could fight guys. That's totally fine. And for those of you who aren't aware of what's going on, George Pickens decided to jump into some extracurriculars during the final moments of the Pittsburgh Steelers game against the Cleveland Browns. And, well, essentially lost the game because he was not paying attention. Not that he was the only part that lost the Pittsburgh Steelers the game. He was actually a very small part that lost the Pittsburgh Steelers the game. But in the last moments, a game that is very much so still in hand for the Steelers, that they have one final shot, throw it up to the end zone. Guess what? You have this guy named George Pickens. And if there are any amount of receivers in the NFL, if there is a list of guys that you would trust in that moment, George Pickens is probably on that list. George Pickens decided that he wasn't even trying. Before Russell Wilson threw the football up in the air, George Pickens was out of the back of the end zone throwing punches at Cleveland Browns Greg Newsome. And you could say that was Greg. If it was, fantastic job by him. Because just like they would do in the NHL, he was told, go take away the team's best player. And, well, he did it. The enforcer won. George Pickens fights at the end of the game, says it's nothing afterwards, calls the Cleveland Browns not very good. The Cleveland Browns come back with their own back and forth here. And just to make sure that we get everything perfect, this is according to Pittsburgh Sports Now's, Steelers Now's, Alan Saunders. Conditions played a huge part in today's game. I don't really think the Cleveland Browns are a good team at all. The conditions kind of saved them. Well, that came with Cleveland Browns players throughout the locker room saying that George Pickens is a fake tough guy and that George Pickens is somebody that they do not respect and that he wasn't making a play. Greg Newsome tweeted it out after the game, and I have a lot of thoughts because this is not the first time. It won't be the last time. Every moment that you think George Pickens has taken a step forward, he takes a step back, sometimes 2 steps back. And where we stand currently, the Pittsburgh Steelers have a massive issue. That issue is, well, George Pickens, because their superstar wide receiver, the guy that they traded away Deontay Johnson because of, the guy that they feel comfortable with Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin as the number 2s because of, the guy that they plan to pay this coming offseason like a superstar wide receiver, is their biggest problem character-wise on the entire roster, and continues to show that he is a character problem that, well, in tough moments, folds. And that's the biggest issue, is if you were going to be an issue and throw stuff on the sidelines and get pissed off when your team is losing, like many wide receivers do, like many players do, no worries. You know what I mean? I think sometimes we over-dramatize things in that department. If George Pickens came to the sideline, slammed his helmet down, freaked out to everybody, and went into the locker room, you'd get a lot of people talking smack. But you want to know what would really be the case here? Is that George Pickens was just part of a brutal loss to a 2-win football team, now a 3-win football team, ended a 5-game winning streak, and his offense is failing him. That's okay. But instead, you gave up before the game ended because you decided that you were going to fist fight and not try to win a game. And that is when it becomes a massive issue. George Pickens, in my eyes, is a problem. He's been a problem. I have said this before. I have gotten backlash before. I've gotten backlash from Pickens before about saying that, well, the drama is here and it is starting. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. See all of your subscriptions in one place and know exactly where your money is going. And for any that you don't want anymore, Rocket Money can help you cancel them with just a few taps. Rocket Money's dashboard gives you a clear view of your expenses across all accounts, easily creates a personalized budget with custom categories to help keep your spending on track, and sees your monthly spending trends in each category to know exactly where your money is going. Get alerts if your bills increase in price, there's unusual spending activity, or if you're close to going over your budget. And the new goals feature automatically saves money for you without you even having to think about it. Whether your goal is to pay off your credit card debt, put away money for a house, or just build your savings, Rocket Money makes it easy. Rocket Money will even try to negotiate lower bills for you, sometimes up to 20%. They automatically scan your bills to find opportunities to save. Then you can ask them to negotiate for you. They'll deal with customer service. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions. They could save members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's features. Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/allsteelers. That's rocketmoney.com/allsteelers. rocketmoney.com/allsteelers. I'll ask you your opinion. What do you say with George Pickens, where we currently stand?
Yeah, George getting into that altercation, I think we'll call it, because I think Greg Newsome also was kind of making sure that he got George Pickens out of the game, as you mentioned on that final play. I don't think that is anywhere close to their biggest problem right now. Yeah, it is a problem, and it's a problem that they've been dealing with really since the guy was drafted. But I don't think that you look at last night's game and that should be the main takeaway. I think George, I'm more concerned with George specifically about the fact that as soon as it started to snow, he was a non-factor in the game. I'm less worried about his, immaturity on that last play. Yes, would you have liked him to be there? Yes. Was he probably the guy that should have been in the middle because you looked at it and it was a weird shell where there was one player on the left of the ball, one player on the right of the ball for the Steelers, and one player behind who was supposed to be underneath? That was George Pickens. He was supposed to be the guy going up to make the play. And that's unfortunate. And you would have to say, well, listen, you need to be there. But at the same time, it's called a Hail Mary for a reason. You put yourself in a situation where you needed to throw up a less than 50-50 ball to win a football game. I'm more concerned about the fact that when the weather conditions started, it affected everybody, but it affected George Pickens more than pretty much everybody else on that field. He was a non-factor, and he wanted a lot of those pass interference calls. And I'll say this, they weren't being called a lot on either side. There was not a lot of pass interference calls. So it's not all on George, but I'm more concerned with the fact that he was a non-factor whenever the weather started getting bad than I am about his immaturity on one final play, because that's nothing new. That's something we've seen, and I'm not making a mountain out of a molehill with something like that. I'm more concerned about the fact that for the entire second half, whenever the snow was coming down in bunches, George Pickens disappeared.
I agree with you, but I don't agree with you. And I could see that the comment section doesn't agree with me. But when that is supposed to be your guy, where is the line? Like, what's the line? You know what I mean? If Newsome hit him first, okay, I get that. Okay, no penalties called. What are we doing here? You got to be better than that. The refs stunk last night. The refs have stunk all season. This. I mean, the NFL refs continue to get worse. They are a growing problem in the NFL, obviously. I mean, but is that just okay? Like, is that what we've come to? Is that it's just okay for Pittsburgh? Because if that's the case, then it's time for a lot of other changes to happen. Mike Tomlin's got to go because he clearly does not have control of his team. And Arthur Smith does not have a game plan that is suited for his guys. I mean, where's the line? You know what I mean? If this is all acceptable, then where is the line? Whose fault could it be then in that circumstance?
No,
Like, I get that George disappeared, but if we're just okay with brushing this stuff off, which is what it seems to be, then what goes on?
I'm not okay with brushing it off, but I'm just saying they have way more pressing issues than George Pickens' immaturity. That's all. I mean, I understand that.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I mean,
yeah, I understand that you'd like him to be not doing any of this, but that's George Pickens. That's what you're going to deal with. What you also get is the guy in the first half. The problem is if he would have been able to do what he did in the first half throughout the entire game, you wouldn't have been in that situation, and you wouldn't have had to be worrying about discussing this right now. I think the biggest thing is he is somebody who can get taken out of game too easily. And that's more concerning to me than, well, on the final play, he lost his mind because Greg Newsome pushed him out of the back of the end zone. So he decided that he wanted to try to harken back to Georgia versus Georgia Tech and throw him through the barricade. So again, it's a problem. I'm not saying, and I'm not trying to minimize that problem. I'm saying there are problems that are far more important to this team and their success this season than George Pickens being easy to get under his skin.
400,000. That's how many men have rescued their nuts from stiff, unforgiving jeans, all thanks to the Perfect Jean. These jeans have enough stretch to accommodate Thanksgiving dinner and are comfy enough to wear all day watching Sunday football. Plus, even though they feel like sweatpants, they look good enough to be your go-to pants for date night. The Perfect Jean has the perfect size for everybody, and we mean everybody. They've got 6 different fits, waists running from 26 to 50 and lengths from 26 to 38, which means there are over 5,000 possible combinations of pants for you to choose from. So if you're a short king or actually 6'5", if you love a loose fit or are still in your skinny jean era, or if you're bulking up or cutting down, the Perfect Jean is the perfect option for you. For a limited time, our listeners get 15% off their first order plus free shipping at theperfectjean.nyc, or Google The Perfect Jean and use our code ALLSteelers15 for 15% off. It's finally time to stop crushing your balls in uncomfortable jeans by going to theperfectjean.nyc. Our listeners get 15% off your first order plus free shipping, free returns, and free exchanges when you use code ALLSteelers15 at checkout. That's 15% off for new customers at theperfectjean.nyc with promo code ALLSteelers15. After your purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Fuck your khakis and get the Perfect Jean.